This is the Cycling Over 60 podcast, Season 3, Episode 38, Sequim Wheelers, and I'm your host, Tom Butler. If you are new to the podcast, before I get into this week's interview, I'll give a brief update on my cycling journey. Kelly and I did the Tour de Victoria in August, and I want to give a report on the ride. I think if you have an opportunity to experience the Tour de Victoria, you should definitely take it. First of all, Victoria, British Columbia is just a terrific place. In addition to the ride, we also visited the Malahat Skywalk about 40 minutes outside of Victoria. It was rainy and cloudy on the day we visited Malahat, so we didn't get the full beauty of the view. But it was still spectacular. And the rain made for fewer crowds, which was nice. Walking on the trail to the Skywalk and spending time outdoors in such a remote place felt like we were recharging our bodies in a way. Our trip started out with a drive to Port Angeles, where we jumped on the Blackball Ferry to Victoria. I think anytime I get on a ferry, I see it as leaving the world behind. It is very rare that we get on a ferry for anything other than recreation. So, a ferry ride is linked to my brain with fun and relaxation. The trip was also part of Kelly's 60th birthday celebration, so we splurged on the hotel. Of course, that added to the special nature of the trip. Our hotel was very close to the starting line on Saturday morning, and we headed out from the hotel in light rain. We were a little too relaxed about it. As we got to the starting area, we found out that almost everybody had already left. I felt bad about that because I wanted Kelly to experience the fun of a big group start. So that is something that is still on the list of things to do with her. I managed to make a fairly silly mistake before the ride. The weather had been showing rain for the whole week, so on Friday I went and picked up some new fenders. But on Saturday morning it looked like the rain wasn't going to be an issue. So I made the decision to leave the new fenders off. That decision I think ensured that we would have rain, which we did for about half of the ride. I kept thinking about the new fenders sitting in the hotel as water sprayed up my back. More about the fenders later. About midway through the ride, the skies cleared and it was absolutely stunning weather. Tour de Victoria is one of the most inclusive rides I've seen. There were options to do 160K, 140K, 100K, 80K, 60K, 40K, 30K, 15K, and even a kids ride. We originally planned on doing 100K, but at pretty much the last minute we switched to the 80K. I think it was the right decision for us. I like the thought of doing a metric century, but I'm glad we didn't have the extra distance. Tour de Victoria gets different sponsors for the different ride distances. I think that adds to the ability to have all the routes well managed. It was definitely an excellent experience from a ride support perspective. The only criticism I would have was that some of the brake stops were just right on the side of the road, and that made it difficult when there were a lot of bikes at the stop trying to get off the road. Here's the biggest question I had about the ride, and actually I still have this question. The 80K route was actually 77 kilometers, so that means 47 miles. It was posted at 770 meters of climbing. That would be around 2,526 feet. However, my computer registered 3,642 feet. I was immediately disappointed with that because I thought it meant that my computer was not measuring elevation appropriately. 3,642 feet is a pretty big difference from 2,526 feet. And if my computer was that far off, it meant that my elevation for the year was way off. However, looking at Strava data for other people that did the 80K route, I've come to believe that my computer was correct and that Tour de Victoria didn't accurately report the elevation gain on the ride. I'm actually glad that the elevation was that much because I was feeling it. There were several climbs that got up around 15%, and that's pretty hard for me. The ride with GPS for the route didn't show that steep of grades, but my computer and my legs registered them. I also didn't manage my fueling and electrolytes very well, and that led me to have to step off the bike at the top of a hill because I was cramping. Cramping just hasn't been a problem for me these days, so I regretted not being more careful with how I was feeding myself. Once again, we experienced how awesome eAssist is for Kelly. I was able to push myself while she was able to pedal at her own level. There were several fantastic aspects to the ride, including how many roads have been blocked off to cars, and the lack of interaction with traffic helped make this one of Kelly's favorite experiences on a bike so far. So for me, that was awesome. My legs were pretty trashed by the end of the ride, but we hadn't had an opportunity to walk around Victoria, so after the ride, we toured the shops on foot for hours. I thought that was going to mean that I would be extra sore from all the walking, but it seemed to have the opposite effect. It seemed to provide a really thorough cool down or something. I'm not positive about this, but maybe doing a lot of walking after a hard ride is good, even if I feel like doing nothing. After doing the Tour de Victoria and seeing how beautiful the city is, and seeing all the great bike infrastructure there, I for sure want to spend more time exploring Vancouver Island by bike. There are several bike touring companies that offer trips by bike around Vancouver Island. I hope to get back there soon, and I hope to do a metric century at the Tour de Victoria in the future. I mentioned I got new fenders. I went to a bike shop in Victoria, but I didn't have my Roubaix with me at the time. The fenders that caught my eye are from Speed Rocker. Like I said, I didn't put them on before the Tour de Victoria. The bike shop thought that they would fit the Roubaix. However, they don't out of the box. They needed some modification. I really like these fenders, so I decided to make some modifications to the rear fender so that it fits. I will let you know if I get that figured out. I'm not the most skilled at modifying things, so we'll see what happens. We are wrapping up the Cycling Without Age program that Cycling Over 60 is doing in collaboration with the Tacoma, Washington Bicycle Club. Earlier this year, I drove to Sequim, Washington to observe the Sequim Wheelers program. Sequim Wheelers have a very developed program, and I wanted to learn from them as much as possible. I see Cycling Without Age trike-shaw rides as one of those things that can bring an element of service to local Cycling Over 60 communities. So, I'm continuing to make sure I know what it takes to do it right. On my ride with them, I asked Eric Mahnerd to come on the podcast and share more about Sequim Wheelers. He agreed, and here's our discussion. I'm so happy to be joined today by Eric Mahnerd. Thank you, Eric, for being here.
Well, I'm glad I could join you as well, Tom.
The reason that Eric's here is that I went out to Sequim and did a ride with the Sequim Wheelers, an organization that's doing it's a great program out there. Taking older people for rides. I've talked about Cycling Without Age here on the podcast before and got to see a really just quality program. And so I wanted Eric to come on and talk a little more about it. I see these Cycling Without Age like programs, these programs where you take people with limited mobility out and let them experience the joy of being on a bicycle without the physical demands of being on a bicycle. I see that as something that brings real heart to Cycling Over 60. And so my bias is that Cycling Over 60 communities would have a program like this so they can give back to people, and trying to do what I can to have that going in Tacoma, Washington, as we build out our first Cycling Over 60 community. Eric, I'm just really appreciating you giving your perspective on this. And I want to start out by asking you, what is your earliest memory of the bicycle?
Boy, that's a good one. I can remember my grandpa. He was a bricklayer, and I grew up in Minneapolis. I can remember when he bought me this little tiny bicycle, and it had those training wheels on the back. And God, I was so thrilled. And he bought one bike, and my sister and I would share it. And then how the day came when we took the training wheels off. That was really big time fun, Yeah. Maybe, second grade, I guess, long time ago.
Was this an older sister or a younger sister?
I always tease her. She's much older. She's 18 months older, and she wasn't as active physically. She was more of a book reader than a go out and do adventures kind of stuff,
Yeah, so that's quite the day when the training wheels come off. You're out there just going. That's cool. I do it a lot different today, it seems like, where they have the Strider bikes or whatever they call them.
On the trail, we see these really young kids just going crazy on these bikes. And I think, God, was I that little? you know. And then we always tease them. It's fun when we see a family and they got a couple, two, three kids on those little bikes. We go, biker gang, watch out, biker gang.
Now, did you keep cycling throughout your life?
Oh yeah, and that you talk about other memories. I can remember, gosh, I must have been about third grade, fourth grade, and my mother bought me a Schwinn bicycle, and it came where the handlebars, it had those little streamers hanging down from the handlebars. And God, I just love that bike. And that was our basic mode of transportation all over the neighborhood. We went on our bicycle. And then I can remember going down a hill that was too steep and it rounded out at the bottom and I bent the tire. But yeah, I loved bicycles for the longest time. And then as I got into high school and got a car and college, the bikes kind of went away until much later in life when my wife convinced me to do a charity ride. It was the MS 150, 150 miles through the gentle rolling hills in Texas. So I bought a really nice Diamondback bike and my wife as well. And we got back into biking and really enjoyed it for years. Yeah, we still bike now. I'm very active bicyclist.
That's cool. Had your wife been doing some cycling before that? What's the impetus for like launching off on 150 miles?
Because she's crazy. She came home with this poster. Look, this looks like fun. And I'm going, that's a long ways. No, it'll be okay. It was a long ways, man. I'll tell you. But we both had bikes at that point, and we weren't using them a lot, and they were kind of older bikes. And then when we got the new bikes, the Diamonds, God, they were so nice and light, and really, we got clip-on shoes, and padded pants. It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a different thing, and we were in an area where there wasn't much traffic, and it was a new development. So it's great places to ride without worrying about getting run over.
That makes a huge difference as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember where I initially saw Sequim Wheelers. I think that it might have been on the Cycling Without Age website, but since then, I've seen all kinds of things about the Sequim Wheelers, including I think King 5 report on a really nice report on what your group is doing. How would you describe Sequim Wheelers to someone who's never seen it in action?
Well, that's a good question. Sequim Wheelers is a voluntary group. We're a 501c, and we rely on donations to keep us going. And we have an adaptive bike program. And so for your listeners, it's basically a bicycle in the back that is electrically assisted. And then on the front, they've attached a wheelchair. And so we have two like that. And this enables us to take people, whether they're elderly people, whether they're physically challenged or intellectually challenged, people that can no longer ride a bike by themselves. We can transfer them to the wheelchair portion of the bike. We get them all strapped in safely, put a helmet on them, and then we give them the joy of riding a bicycle again. We take them out into the beautiful countryside out here on the Olympic Discovery Trail. We also, Tom, have two other bikes. One is a trishaw where they can sit side by side. So we have two people side by side, and that's a very popular bike because we do a lot of private rides as well as facilities. And so we get like grandmother and grandson, or daughter, father. And then it's also really neat. We have some married couples, and we have couples that are romantically attached in the facilities here in town. So they get to ride side by side, holding hands. And so that's a cool bike. And then our last bike that we have, it's called a Fun to Go. And the person, our passenger, sits side by side with the pilot. So just quick terms here. The person driving the bicycle is a pilot, The person riding in the bicycle is the passenger. We call them the wheeler. And then we always have at least one, two, or three safety riders that are going along, making sure that the ride stays safe, looking out for traffic, for obstacles like that. So in the fun to go, the person sits right next door, right side by side with the pilot, and they have the opportunity to pedal. So they can assist in the bike. If they don't want to pedal, that's fine. We can put a platform down for them as well. That's really popular with some of our younger senior citizens. They get exercise. So that's a real popular bike as well.
Yeah, and it looks pretty cool too, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
How did Sequim Wheelers get started?
Our founder is Nicole Lepping, and she was watching a PBS show out of Healing, Illinois. And it was a PBS show about a program up there. And she thought, wow, with our elderly population and the number of retirement facilities we have, that might be a good fit. So she called them, got a lot of information. They referred her to Portland Wheelers. And Portland Wheelers is one of the largest programs in the country, and they're out of Portland, Maine. So she and another friend, Leilani Sunt, they flew out to Maine and got all the information they could get from those folks. And they were really generous with their help. And they came back here, put together a group of about 15 volunteers and started raising money. At that time, the Duet bicycle that they bought cost about $7,000. So she came to our Rotary Club and was making a presentation what they wanted to do. And one of our generous Rotarians, Bryce Fish, he gave them $5,000. And with that other money they had, they were able to go ahead and buy that first bike. That was in 2018. As you can imagine, here in the Northwest, our season for getting the rides is limited by the weather. And so that summer, they had the one Duet. They went on 61 rides, and they took 91 people out on the Olympic Discovery Trail.
That's an incredible beginning, I think. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, it really is. And they just continued to expand the program. They bought a second bike, continuing to raise money. First Federal gave them a grant that helped buy a bike. And then, like I say, we're a 501c, and people were giving individual donations. So they continued to grow. And this past year, we were up to 4 bicycles. We had 73 volunteers helping. 20 were new that we trained during that time frame. We took out 408 wheelers on rides, over 1,000 hours of volunteer time, and we were working with 13 different facilities or groups here in the Sequim area. And so our facilities, one is a rehab, for physical injuries, people recovering from that, or a stroke, that type of things. Then we have, I think, 3 memory issues facilities. Then we have the rest are quite a few of them are elderly folks, retirement facilities. Then we do deal with 2 different organizations that are working with intellectually challenged individuals. So it's a widespread. Then in addition to that, we give out a large number of private rides. The program has expanded quite a bit since its origin in 2018.
I'm thinking that those numbers that you're talking about, Sequim Wheelers must be one of the larger programs out there. Is that right?
To be perfectly honest, I would venture to guess we're right up there at the top. The only other one that I know that's really large is the Portland Wheelers out there in Portland, Maine. And they're quite large, and they have paid staff. Our program, for the most part, our wheelers and the facilities, they bring the people to us, and then we go on the trail. We do go to a couple of facilities where we actually we'll drive the bikes over, pick them up, and then take them back to the trail. Up in Portland, Maine, they have a fleet of trucks, and they load the bikes on the trucks and go to the facilities. Every year they have a big fundraiser, and I think last year they raised $150,000 for their program. So it's a big program. Yeah.
Talk about what the typical ride experience looks like for guests.
Okay. What we will do is I'll do a 4-bike ride. That's what we do most of the time. We'll take out 4 bikes. So we'll have the Trishaw, the Fun to Go, and then 2 wheelchair bikes. The volunteers will meet at our storage facility. We'll get all the bikes ready, and then we have a safety briefing as to what the organization we're going to work with and what our plan is for the ride. And then about, maybe a 2-minute ride away is the Dungeness River Nature Center. And the facilities will come to us and we'll unload the people there. Then we get them into the chairs, get them all strapped in and comfortable, and then we give them a helmet. And depending on the weather, we may bundle them up in a blanket because it is cool out here. This has been a particularly cool summer. And like personally, I've had 6 rides canceled because of weather. Because if it's cold, we just don't go. It's no fun. And so once we get them all bundled in, and we have a very open dialogue with our wheelers, and we've seen a lot of them. We know them from other rides. It's like a big happy family. We get them all loaded up, and then we head west on Olympic Discovery Trail. And for your listeners, the Olympic Discovery Trail, when it's completed, it'll go from Seattle all the way out to the ocean on the Olympic Peninsula. And each year they're adding more and more to the route. And part of it is where the old railroad went. So it's a perfect right of way, and where the tracks were, they've put in paving. And so it's just a beautiful a trail to go on. And the best part is there's no cars. So it's nice and quiet. You're surrounded by nature, surrounded by trees, an occasional deer or two. I have not seen but one rider. They didn't even see a bear, and that's all right. I don't care to see the bear. So then we get them on the bikes. We head west, and our first stop is maybe a couple hundred yards away, and that's the old trestle bridge across the Dungeness River. So we'll stop there and we take photos, and then we continue west. And the ride is in total is an hour. So we go for about an hour, and we'll cross 3 streets. But the rest of the time you're in nature's glory out there on the trail. We turn around, we stop at the airport, this private airport, hopefully see a plane or two, make sure they need water if they're warm enough. We come back the other direction. We go to the Dungeness River Nature Center in the back, take some more photos, and then we take them back to their van and say goodbye. All in all, it takes about an hour on the ride.
I'm thinking of people that are doing it for the first time. Can they be hesitant sometimes?
Well, it's interesting. I'll tell you a great story. The lady, her name was Beth, and she was really nervous. And she didn't want to get in the wheelchair. She was afraid it wasn't going to be safe. But the people at the facility, they convinced her to be safe. We got her all strapped in, and we started going. And she said, I don't want you to go too fast. I said, nope, I won't go too fast. And as we were going across the bridge, I could hear her. And I said, Beth, are you singing? And she said, well, yes, I am singing. And I said, and why are you singing? Well, then I won't be scared. So for the next hour, Beth and I sang the whole route. And then I kept trying to come up with songs. And Beth was probably in her 80s, so I'm reaching back to songs in the 50s. And, and I would know the beginning, but then I wouldn't know the rest of the words. So I'd make them up. And we had the best time. And when we got done, we helped her back into the van, and then we give them a little souvenir pin. And I pinned the pin on her, and she said, "I want to thank you very much." And I said, "Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you weren't scared. No, the singing really helped. So when I come next time, could you have a songbook? Because you don't seem to know the words." So that's the kind of stuff that we get. It's it is. I do a lot of volunteer work. I'm in the Rotary, I have Boys and Girls Club, the food bank, but this is by far one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, or the rest of our 70 volunteers. It's such a meaningful thing to see the joy in that we're bringing to these elderly citizens, or even the younger ones. Yeah.
When I came and rode with you, there was a gentleman, and it was obvious it wasn't his first time, but he was
Yeah.
raring to go. He
Yeah.
kept going like, "Okay, let's hit it, let's go."
Yeah.
And so I'm sure it doesn't take many times before they're really comfortable with the experience.
They talk about there's a memory of the cottages, and the people there are having memory issues, and some very severe memory issues, some not quite as much. And so there's a couple, they're not married, but they're a couple, and it's Misty and Jim. And they always ride in the trishaw together, and they hold hands. And when Misty comes down, she'll say, "Hi, Eric, how are you?" And I'll say, "Play Misty for me." It was a song in a movie. And so we laugh and we joke. So we get to the end of the road, and we're going to turn around and come back. And I had the trishaw, so I got to do a 3-point turn to get it in the opposite direction. And every time I'm pulling backwards, the two of them go beep, 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 beep. I mean, these people love this stuff. And
That's incredible.
uh, let me tell you another real quick one here. I had, there's another one, Dungeness Memory Center, and there was the daughter and her father, and her father has Alzheimer's. And so we took him on his first ride with the daughter. And when we got done, the lady is almost in tears. She says, "I can't thank you enough. I haven't seen my father be this responsive and this communicative in the longest time." And as we were driving along, he's remembering stuff and he's talking about stuff. And, if you think about these facilities, they serve a wonderful purpose, but to be alone in those facilities and never getting out much, especially the people with the memory issue, I mean, this is just such a rewarding experience for us, such an adventure for them. So, yeah, it's a great program.
There's a PBS series called Joyride, which focuses on cycling without age, and it captures some really good stories there.
Yeah.
I would encourage anybody to go to look that up. I want to talk a little more about how the bikes work. You talked about, I think, 4 different types. There's 3, I think, that you mentioned, and there's a fourth. The fourth one is a bike that will receive a wheelchair. And then you have the Fun to Go bike, which is the side by side bike, and the Trishaw. The brand, I think, is called Trio Bike. And then the other one that you have, it has like a wheelchair on the front of it, or a wheelchair like. I mean, it's a wheelchair that's kind of specially made to go on the front of a bicycle, but someone gets into that. And so I'm interested in kind of looking at those as a way for people who can't ride a traditional bicycle to be able to get out and about. Let's start with the Fun to Go. I guess the thing I would first ask is, are you able to kind of tailor the bikes that you're using to who's going to show up, or is that basically a mystery of who's going to be there?
Yeah, it's a mystery. Now, like the cottages, they come every Friday. They bring 5 people, sometimes 4. she will give me when I'm going to call her. What day is today? Tuesday. So I call her tomorrow. I call her a couple days ahead of time, and she'll say I'll have Beth and Jim and Misty and Greg, and so I'll need the Fun to Go, the Trishaw, and the two wheelchair bikes. And then she'll say, yeah, we're going to put Greg and Misty in the Trishaw. Jim wants to do the Fun to Go because he likes to pedal, and the other two will be in the wheelchair bikes. So some of the people do know who wants which bike. So we try to adapt it to them. We do have some people that are physically challenged besides being elderly, not in very good shape. So we would never put them on the Fun to Go to pedal, but we can put them on the Fun to Go, and the pedals are out of the way and there's a platform to put their feet on it. So most of the time, if people are physically challenged, then we put them in one of the wheelchair bikes because it's more comfortable for them to sit. The Fun to Go is much better for an active person the way the bike is designed. And then the most comfortable one is the Trishaw. It's got a really nice padded seat. And we can also, it has a cover that we can bring up. So if it's a little cool, we bring the cover up. It's got a beautiful fleece blanket that keeps them nice and warm. That's our most comfortable one. And so people that have the most challenges, we'll put them in there.
On the Fun to Go, it looks like there's two handlebars, but actually only one of the handlebars is there for control. How easy is that to maneuver?
Well, and it's good because we could only have one person deciding which direction we're going to go,
Right.
And it is a very maneuverable bike, and it can turn on a dime. We get to where we have to turn around, head back to the nature center, boom, and it's already pointed the other direction while I'm doing the 3-point turn with the big old Trishaw. Yeah, it's a nice bike. That bike new, oh gosh, that's probably $15,000. The bikes are very expensive. They're made in the Netherlands, and the new one we just bought, it's called an Au Pair, and it's a wheelchair bike. It has what looks to be like it's actually a comfortable padded chair in the front, and that's over $11,000 for that bike. The Trishaw's close to 15,000. And the other part is that because they're made in the Netherlands, you start talking about the shipping. That's a good hunk. Also, the import duties, and they're not too bad. It's $300, so that's not too bad for $11,000. But they're quite expensive bikes.
One thing is for sure, they need to be quality bikes. If there's one thing you're not going to skip on, it's going to be this activity for sure.
Yeah, and each one of the bikes is electrically assisted, which is definitely needed. So that helps a great deal. When you figure, I think the maximum a wheeler can weigh is 235, 240. And then you have the pilot on it. You got a lot of weight on that bicycle. So being electrically assisted really helps. And as you mentioned, they are quality bikes. As much as we use them, we have 3 different volunteers that keep them maintained. They take a lot of use. I'm trying to think. I just saw it someplace. Last year, where is it? They went 850 miles. So they get a lot of use and a lot of wear and tear on them.
You're getting bikes, the Au Pair, that have this seat on the front, and you have 2 of those currently. Those aren't Au Pairs, though, right? Are they a different brand?
Currently, we have 1 Au Pair and 1 Duet. And when we get these 4 new bikes, we're going to actually retire the Duet and keep it as a spare. And the Duet's a nice bike, except for one problem. The handlebars are low. And if you're more than about 5'5", when you're pedaling, your knees hit the handlebars. I'm 6'5", and I can't. If I try to ride that bike, my knees are way out to the side, and it's not good fit for me. So I never ride that bike. The au pairs, the handlebars are real high, and so it's not a leg issue at all. Yeah.
On the au pairs, does it feel very stable as a pilot? Do you have to kind of get used to a feel for it, or are they well balanced and everything where it feels really easy?
That's a really good question because when we ride from the storage shed over to where we're going to pick up our wheelers, it's about 3 or 4 blocks. And on that short ride, we have 3 sets of concrete weights in that seat to simulate a passenger sitting there. Because without it, the front end's really squirrely. And then once you get the passenger in there, now it's well balanced between the front and the back, and the bike handles really well.
Interesting. You're going to be getting a bike that accepts a wheelchair. And I'm wondering, was that in response to a demand for a bike like that? Or how did the decision come about to buy that bike?
Well, we're dealing right now with 13 facilities. Several of those facilities have people that it's very difficult to transfer out of the wheelchair. They're basically wheelchair bound. They get out of bed in the morning, they put them in the wheelchair, and they stay there. And so this new bike, what will happen is it has a platform on it. We hook a little cable onto the back of the wheelchair, and then we can winch it onto the platform. And once it's on the platform, you lock the winch cable, and then there's 2 sets of tie-down devices, one for each wheel, that secures the wheelchair bike to the platform. Now, that passenger or the wheeler does not have to be transferred. And so it's a real boon. When we were made aware of that type of bike, one of our volunteers contacted all of the facilities. Hey, we're thinking about this. Do you have a need for a bike like that? And we had 16 responses of yes.
Wow.
So we're excited to get that bike. It's going to open up our organization to a whole new line of passengers or wheelers. Yeah, it's going to be really great.
Now, you do have rides that the public can request or sign up for. How's that process work?
It's really simple. I would encourage your listeners to go to our website, and it's just really easy, sequimwheelers.com, SEQUIM.com. And on there, there's a link, request a ride, and you hit that, and it'll be the information that they need will be right there. You fill it out, and it's simple. You put in the date, time, and then you do have to sign a waiver, an insurance waiver, and you can sign that electronically, and you send it in, and then our schedule will reach out to you and get you all taken care of. We're a 501(c). There is no charge for this. If you want to make a donation, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. We do at least one ride a day with the facilities. On some days, we're doing rides in the morning and in the afternoon. For the most part, our private rides are on the weekends. They can be in the week based on availability of bikes.
It was really fun when I was on my way out of town. I stopped for lunch after I'd ridden with you. And the person behind the counter, we got talking. I mentioned why I was there. He goes, "Oh, that's really cool. How much are those bikes? I'd like to get one to take my 73-year-old mom for rides." And I said, "Well, they're quite expensive." And I shared how much. He's like, "Oh, that's quite expensive." I said, "However, you can just go to the website and sign her up because they do these rides." And in having that as an option, just like was thrilling to him. He just, he was picturing his mom being able to get out. And I think the truth is she's a typical person that doesn't get out a lot, which can happen. And being able to send him over the website was fantastic.
I was looking, I thought I how many. Yeah, we've had 13 private rides this summer. And this summer, as I mentioned, the weather just wasn't cooperating and we were delayed and delayed and delayed. So this summer, unfortunately, we won't have as many rides as we did last year. Unless, of course, the fall cooperates. And if it gets below the 50 degrees, it's not fun. And we're heading west, and usually out here in Sequim, the wind is out of the west-northwest. So it's right into their face going out. Coming back, it's not so bad. And then obviously, if there's any rain, we don't operate in the rain.
Talk about the interaction you have with the facilities you partner with. I'm thinking they must just love this.
They absolutely do. They are so appreciative of what we do. Most of them, in fact, I can say all of them have contributed to our program in support each year. And when you think about what we're doing, the advantage that we're giving them to take some of their people out and get to do something, it's really a really neat program. And especially, and we've mentioned this already, is that when you start getting into the elderly patients, I've had patients into their 90s. Just last week, and one was 97, and she was a tiny little lady from England originally, sharp as a tack. She says, well, my body's wearing out. The first time I met her daughter, who is 67 years old, was there with her, and it was her first ride. So she said to her, the daughter said to the mother, she said, so Mom, tell them about what you did in World War II. And she said, well, I was working in a factory in London. And she said, and tell them what you did when you heard the war had ended in Germany. Well, I had gotten out of school and I heard they were celebrating in London, but I couldn't get anybody to go with me. So I got on a train and went by myself. Then she said, and tell them what you did in London. And she kind of grinned and she's blushing a little bit. She said, well, I kissed some of the soldiers. That's the kind of stuff that we run into.
Right.
It's so neat,
That's so fun.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Rotary when you guys are starting out. Are you guys known by the Sequim community, by different organizations, by the community as a whole?
The Rotary Club, it's a Sequim Sunrise Rotary Club. And I might mention that you are talking to its current president.
Okay.
Show more respect. We have about 75 members in our club. We're very, very active in the community. We have several ways that we raise money, and almost every penny we raise goes back to the community. And just recently, we did a fundraiser for the Sequim Wheelers and raised almost $1,000 for them. Plus, we do scholarships. We help the Boys and Girls Club. We help the food bank. We help all kinds of projects. Very generously, as I mentioned, Bryce Fish, he donated $5,000 for the original bike. And then later, as the program was building, he bought him a second bike and paid for the whole thing outright. So yeah, the Rotary has been an integral part of the Sequim Wheelers. Yeah.
And is the city aware of Sequim Wheelers and support?
Oh yeah, we get a lot of support from them, not financially, but they're very appreciative of what we do, and they help promote us. We set up booths during the various farmers markets, the irrigation festival, the lavender festival. They are invited to be in the annual parade that we have. So yeah, the city enjoys what we do. I think that's the one thing that people, each year, more and more people are becoming aware of the Sequim Wheelers and the service it's providing to the community. And that's why people say, well, you're buying 4 more bikes? And I said, well, we really think the need is there. and we're just going to keep on expanding. So.
That's wonderful. And I know, experiencing firsthand that the people that you meet on the trail, either you've met them before and they know what's going on, or they are, yeah, it seems like everybody has a good response to it.
Yeah, we get a lot of positive response from the people on the trail. And then we do, as I mentioned, have two groups that are intellectually challenged, and they really get excited when they're on the trail and they want to wave at everybody and talk, and they love the dogs and the animals. And the people on the trail with these folks, they are so generous with their time and their understanding of what the kids are all about. And it's really a neat experience.
What does it take to become a volunteer pilot? There's a process there, I know.
You have to sign up. Each spring, we have an open house, and it's in the parking lot at the Nature Center. We set up our little tent, and we have free cookies, and we have all the bikes there. And as people are going by the trail, they stop and see us. Plus, before the open house, we will do a promo on our KSQM radio station. Susan Sorensen and I will do a couple promos on there. We get a really nice article in the paper so people know about the open house. And so we have a good turnout. Last year, we had 21 new volunteers. This year, we had 16. What the process is, you sign up to join, you have to do a background check, which is relatively easy. And then we bring them to an orientation meeting, and we give them a history of the organization and what our goals are. And then if they decide to join us, then we have a formal training program. And the training program are 3 sessions, and they take 2.5 hours each. And they're with our experienced riders that train the new guys. If they need more training, fine. If they don't, then we send them out on the trail. Sometimes what we'll find is that people will not feel comfortable with riding the bikes because they're good sized bikes with that chair in front or side by side, and they end up being safeties. And we have a whole set of rules and regulations for our safeties. And knock on wood, we've never had an accident, so that's great because we're very safety conscious. When it's time to start actually scheduling the new trainees into the program, we'll make sure that they are with seasoned veterans, and we inform the ride leader. Every ride that goes out has one ride leader that, hey, Bob is coming and this is going to be his first ride. Okay, great. And so they keep an eye on him and make sure that he's comfortable with what we're doing. And then we also always have debriefings after every ride, and with the new guys, making sure that they have any questions, they can get the answers.
For people that like bike riding, would you say that being on one of these bikes is going for a bike ride? It's just like a bike ride plus.
Well, I'm going to say it's going for a rewarding bike ride because you're doing something really neat. And in most cases, not all cases, most cases you have an opportunity to talk with the people. Sometimes they don't. The memory issue people sometimes are not communicative, so they don't have that. But for the most part, yeah, you have an opportunity to share stories, to sing along, even if you don't know the words.
Right. An opportunity to compose words on the fly.
Yeah.
What would you say is maybe some of the harder logistical challenges with organizing adaptive cycling rides?
At this point, if you'd asked that question in 2018, they'd have a pretty good answer for you. This point, we are really well managed. So what we do at the end of the season, we have a postseason meeting where we try to get as many of the pilots and safeties together. Hey, here's the problem. Here's what we did. Should we be concerned about this? We do a season review. And as we're going through the season, if something comes up that we think everybody should know. We do blast emails to everybody in the organization. And then as we start getting into the new year, the new season, all the bikes are tuned up and ready to go. Then we go through our recurrent training. So every veteran, we have a 2-hour training session with them to refamiliarize them with the bikes. And we have all the bikes available so they can, ride them. The electronics and the controls on the bikes are different. And so how to operate those, what the boost is. So we get them spooled up. And then again, as I mentioned to you and shared with you, last season we did a really nice job on a formal training syllabus. And then we have that all set to go for our new hires. So, yeah, major challenges, we don't have them. Now, I would say we are going to have a little bit of a challenge because we've got 2 new types of bikes coming. The Au Pairs will be the same, but we've got the Trishaw and the new platform bike. So we'll have to introduce those and build a syllabus for them.
There is a logistical element of keeping the bikes going. Is parts, maintenance and parts, is that something that has to be managed?
Yeah, an example is we have another Duet that is in storage because the battery has died. But the battery, because it's a large battery, is so expensive and the bike is old, we've decided not to replace. And it's sort of a spare part locker now. The wear and tear on the bikes because of the amount of weight on them. We have spoke damage, we have wheel damage. The tires obviously are wearing out. So yeah, it is quite a bit of maintenance to keep them up because, like I said, that we've already gone 800 miles or something this year, and it wears them out.
Well, you guys are so well managed and so experienced at this point. I'm wondering what kind of interaction you have with Cycling Without Age at this point.
We don't do a lot with them. We are members of Cycling Without Age. They're a huge organization. I think they're in 41 countries. God, I've read, I think 3,500 chapters. And we have used them as a resource for insurance, for purchasing bikes. We've gotten valuable information off of their blogs, safety information and ideas. So yeah, it's a source that we use. But our program's sort of self-contained and not quite like theirs. So not a really, really active association with Cycling Without Age.
You mentioned the Olympic Discovery Trail, and what an awesome resource that is. When I was there, I experienced the Nature Center, which is a cool place. It's like, it feels almost ideal as a location to be able to make the rides easy.
It really is. It's a super place in that there's a great starting point to head west on the trail. 2 years ago, they were doing repair work on the bridge. So we couldn't go west on the trail. We had to go east. And the trail to the east isn't nearly as desirable because one section, there's all these trees and the roots are growing through the trail and it's bumpier than heck through there. Then we get up by Hendrickson Avenue and the traffic is there, so it's loud. And then the trail ends up being in a residential neighborhood. So you're on streets where cars are also part of it. Sadly, the old railroad trestle bridge, it's wood, has been determined to be unsafe. They used to have activities on the bridge, fundraisers for the Nature Center. And this year they had an engineering group that come out and say, no, you can't do that anymore. It's okay for people to walk by, but you can't have large groups on that bridge. And we've just found out that they're going to tear the bridge down. They're going to build a new one, but it's going to be identical to the old one. So that'll be, it'll be a wooden structure like the old one. But that means that we will not be able to go west on the trail, and we'll have to be going east again, which is less desirable.
There is a pretty active group of people that are focused on the Olympic Discovery Trail. Does Sequim Wheelers get involved with those efforts? Are you advocating for the trail?
Oh, absolutely. The Olympic Trail Coalition, it's a large organization. They keep the maintenance on the trail. They're raising funds for improving the trail. They're lobbying to get the trail extended constantly. It's amazing what they've done. Like I said, it'll go from Seattle all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. And there are sections on that trail that are just gorgeous. Unfortunately for us, they're not accessible to us because we're time limited as to how long we can be on the bikes with our wheelers. And we don't have the facilities or the resources to be able to take people to some of the other areas, but they're certainly beautiful areas for individuals to ride.
You are getting these for bikes, including one that's different than what you've had before. Do you have any question that the program's going to expand and utilize all those resources?
No, we are quite confident that we can utilize those resources. Like we said, it's going to be a net 3 because one more bike is going to be retired unless we really need it. We have demand for more than what we have now. We have enough volunteers to expand the program. We were disappointed because of the delay, but on the other side of the coin, it'll probably work out well in that we will have all winter long to get the bikes assembled and become familiar with them. And then we can also expand our program during those months, reaching out to the facility saying, okay, instead of being able to bring 4 riders, you're going to be able to bring 7. And
that's fantastic.
That'll work out nicely.
So what do you see the future bringing for Sequim Wheelers?
Well, as I mentioned, we are a 501(c), and so we rely on donations to keep ourselves going. And when I say donations, we've been very fortunate in that we've had corporate sponsors. First Federal, as I mentioned, the tribe is very supportive of our program. The Benjamin Phillips Foundation, they've given us close to $30,000 in grants. We have several individuals, 2 off the top of my head, that have given us $10,000 plus each. Bryce has given us $10,000. We have other organizations, boom, once a year they send us a check for $2,300 in support of our program. I think all total we've raised over $100,000 since 2018. And so we need to keep on generating the funds going forward to pay for our program. And I think as long as we can do that, we certainly are confident that we're going to have enough volunteers. And with the expanding of the elderly population in Sequim, we certainly feel that we're going to have more than enough demand for our product from the local community. And one of the other things that we're doing, we're also reaching out to younger people. So the 2 groups, Mosaic and Tim's Place, that deal with the intellectually developed children and adults, more children that way. Plus, we've done road trips over to Port Townsend and to other schools where we have physically challenged people that we've introduced this to.
What do you think people would find to be the most surprising aspect of the program?
I would think probably the most surprising aspect is the joy that our wheelers receive by getting out of the facility and out into the fresh air and out into nature. I went to, her name is Mary. She was 90 years old. She's not with us anymore. And her birthday was coming up. And I had her on a ride. She graduated from Sequim High School in 1949. There were 49 kids in her class. and she couldn't wait to get out of this hick town. And she went over to Seattle and became a nurse and stayed over there until she retired. Then she and her husband came back, and he passed away, and she ended up in a retirement facility. So I had her for a ride, her first ride, and she's just thrilled with being out on the bike. And we're driving along. She says, "See that house up there?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "My best girlfriend in high school was in that house." And I said, "Really?" And then she said, "But maybe she wasn't my best girlfriend." And I said, "Why's that, Mary?" She said, "Well, she stole my boyfriend." I said, "Oh, well, are they still married?" She said, "No, they're both dead." And so then we're going around and she's pointing out the history of Sequim. So her birthday was the next week, and my wife used to be a florist, so she made a really pretty bouquet, and she also makes homemade chocolates and a card. And so I went to her nursing home, and I said, "Hi, I'm here to see Mary. Come on, I'll take you down." We knocked on the door, and her nursing home consisted of a small bathroom and one room. And there was a bed over in the corner, there was a chair, a TV, and a little tiny kitchenette with a coffee pot and that. And she was so thrilled to see me and that I had brought that. And then she started telling me about what it meant to her to be able to come on that ride. And she said, "I just love it. I just can't wait to do it again." And I had her 2 more times that summer. And it was just a joy for her to come out. Sadly, she's not with us anymore. Yeah, I think that's the most surprising part. If people could see the smiles on our wheelers' faces when they get done with the ride, or if they've been on the ride before, if you could see their smile when they're about to start the ride, it's just really wonderful. And hand in hand with that, the workers at the facilities that bring them to the ride or are there when we pick them up, they're so happy too, because they know they're bringing joy to their clients, to their residents. So yeah, that's definitely it. Yeah.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. And, and I've experienced that, that the impact that it has, and it's wonderful. Eric, thank you so much for coming on and talking more about Sequim Wheelers. I just love the work that you guys are doing there, what you're building, what you continue to expand, and so happy that you came on and talked about it.
Well, I really want to thank you, Tom, for giving me this opportunity. I will encourage your listeners again, just go to sequimwheelers.com. You can find out more about us and volunteer or sign up for a ride, or if you like, make a donation.
Yes, fantastic. And I also just want to compliment you. You're a leader with this organization. You're a leader in your community, and good job. I think it's wonderful that you're taking time to make your community better.
Well, thank you very much. I worked a lot of years. I used to be an airline pilot, and I worked in aviation for a long, long time. And when we moved up here, it just gives me an opportunity to give back to the people in our community. And there are so many wonderful people in this town, little town, 8,000 people, and volunteerism makes it work. And I'm really glad that I'm capable of being able to do that.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, and maybe I'll make it out again and do another ride with you guys. It was fun.
I just say, hey, come on, ride with us. Then we'll do it again.
That'd be fun. All
hey,
right.
Good luck on your program. I hope it works out. And if you do need any more stuff, holler at me. I'd be glad to help you out.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll probably take you up on that. So.
Okay, buddy. Take care.
Right. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
I believe that there's an aspect of vibrant living that is only possible when we give to others without expectation of getting something in return. And I believe that aspect is amplified when we give to others as a team. I'm grateful that there are leaders like Eric out there working behind the scenes to bring service opportunities to life. When we do a Cycling Without Age ride, there are 3 responses we get. One response comes from the passengers, or wheelers as Eric called them. Almost without exception, they respond by being very thankful that we took them for a ride. Second is the response from staff at our facility who love our rides. They're the ones that get to hear how much their residents enjoy the rides we do. And finally, whoever sees us out on a ride responds with smiles and waves, and usually a statement like, "That's so cool." I think this last response really says something. People immediately understand the value of getting outside at the speed of biking, experiencing the sun and the fresh air. And they can see that we're giving an opportunity for people who aren't mobile to have that experience. Hopefully, we can expand our program here to do even more rides next summer. I hope all of you have ways to give something to your community. Maybe you have also found something that combines cycling and service. And remember, age is just a gear change.